Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm here with Morgan, our session aide, and Tempest, our chief of staff, is on as well. And we just wanted to have an opportunity to go over a few things that have happened this session so that you all will be fully aware of what has happened in the House, at least as we are moving toward crossover. And don't forget, crossover is when all of the House bills that have passed the House go over or cross over to the Senate, and all of the bills that have passed the Senate cross over to the House. So as you're moving forward after Wednesday, you'll be calling senators about House bills, and you'll be calling delegates about Senate bills. And so Monday and Tuesday will be quite longer than what you may be used to. And so you just want to stay tuned today. Right now, actually, we're having a pro forma session, which is kind of perfunctory or ceremonial, and it just advances the bills. So there were some bills that came out of committee on Friday and would have been on first reading on Monday. And remember, they have to have 3 readings, but that would have put it after crossover deadline. So we advanced those bills. So the bills that would have been on first reading on Monday will actually be on second reading by Monday and can be voted on Tuesday. If you have any questions as we're going through this, feel free to drop them in the chat, and you can send it to everyone, or you can send it just to me. And Tempest and Morgan are helping me watch for those questions. But I just wanted to go through some of the websites that are really helpful as you all are following along and watching the bills that are passing. And so on LIS, and I want to make sure everybody can see it, but on LIS, we have all of the bills that have been proposed, and more information about them. And then this is the site that you can really use to track them. And so you just go to, sorry, one second. Okay, so you just go to lis.virginia.gov, and then this is the site that comes up. And so right now, I'm going to go to General Assembly members, because that's how you can go straight to, say, your delegate or senator's page to see the bills that they have worked on specifically. So I'm going to scroll down to mine, and it will have all of the information. If I can find my name, there we go. So it has all of the information. It's where I'm located during session, the phone number to call to get to us in session, and also our email. Then these are the committees that I'm a part of: General Laws, Health, Welfare Institutions, Privileges and Elections, and Public Safety. And you can click on those to see all of the bills that those committees are dealing with, mine and others. And then when you go to Chief Patron, those are the ones that I put in. And then Chief Co-Patron are bills that I'm working very closely with others on. And then Co-Patron are bills that I'm supporting and making sure I do everything that I can to help them pass. And then budget amendments we'll get to, because the budget is definitely a huge conversation this session, but that has a little bit later of a deadline, so we might have a whole separate conversation on the budget. But right now I'm going to click on Chief Patron so you can see the list of bills that I put in myself. And let's see if we can make that a little bigger. And so these are the bills that I am working on. And first I want to talk about the ones that have passed already and are in the Senate. And so the first one is House Bill 277. And right now, sorry, if you click on the bill, you always want to go to the last version. As these things go through committee, they can be amended, there might be a substitute, and when that happens, that means the bill has changed. It'll typically be about the same topic, but it might be very different than what it started out with. So you want to make sure that you always go to the latest one. And so for this one, it was the committee substitute. So right now, current law is in the regular font. So if it's just regular font, like all of this, that is current code, current law. You want to look for what is italicized or what is stricken out. And that's what the bill is proposing to change. Italics is what the bill would add in, and a strike through is what the bill would take out of current code. So right now, current code says that community service, while performed before and after incarceration, can count towards someone's fees and fines. And so what this bill would do is add in the word during. And so that gets you to allowing for community service performed before, during, and after to help count towards fees and fines. And then also, while we were in committee, it was pointed out that we needed to enter in the code sections that would provide for defining what would count for community service. So then you could cross-reference those code sections, and it also allows for work with, say, a nonprofit. And so it really allows for the sheriff to be the one that decides, what the community service could be. And so that's pretty cool. So that has passed the House, and it is headed to the Senate. And and you can check and see the latest action. So that's December is when we dropped it. And then if you scroll down, you can see that it passed out of courts of justice, 22-0. And then it passed the House 97-0. And now it is in the Senate. And after crossover, it will go before the Committee on the Judiciary. So I have to start the process over and really make the case for why it should be law and give the, stats, statistics, and all of that so that the Senate can pass it out of committee. Then it can pass the Senate. And then that's when it would go to the governor to be signed into law. So I know that was pretty quick, but again, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And then as we stop for questions, we'll see what we can cover. So then the next ones are 336 and 337. So as it is right now, if an employee files a complaint against an employer for wage theft, it is legal for that employer to then fire that employee for filing a complaint. Now, that is nowhere near fair. And so what 337 would do is make it illegal for an employer to discriminate against or fire an employee on the basis of their having filed a complaint. And then 336 says that if the department is investigating an employer for wage theft, and in that investigation that, let's say I put up a complaint, if they're investigating my complaint and then they see, oh wow, there's like 10 other employees at this place that this complaint could really be filed for, they wouldn't have to go to those 10 people and have them initiate new ones. They could go on and investigate this employer for wage theft right then and there. So those have also passed, and then I can just show you that went to a subcommittee, then a committee, and then it passed the House, and then that will go in front of the Senate Committee for Commerce and Labor. So both of those passed. And then next we have 340. And this has been covered a little bit back home, but there have been amendments made to this. So last year when the government went into that shutdown for 35 days, just imagine if you're not being a federal worker, which we have plenty in Hampton Roads and of course a ton in Northern Virginia, not being paid for 35 days. That means you were not paid for an entire month. And so if you had to pay rent, or if you had to, if you were leasing a home, or if you owned a home and you had to pay your mortgage, those institutions are still expecting their money whether you've been paid or not. And so what we did last year under Senator McPike's bill is that we provided some time for you to be able to not be served with an eviction notice and not be taken to court for an eviction. It gave you a little bit of extra time so that once that back pay was given, you had a little bit of time to catch up on your bills. And so now this House Bill 340 this year is making that permanent, because last year's was just an emergency kind of deal and it expired September 2019. So as we're providing for for this to be permanent. So if any other furlough pops up, this would go into place. And so the furlough would have to last at least 14 days for this to trigger it. And then you could use it within 90 days from the end of the furlough. And so those were the amendments that we made to it. And so we're excited to take that to the General Laws and Technology Committee once we get over to the Senate. So that was 340. And then 420 just says that basically if we, as the Virginia Department of Emergency Management works with localities to make sure that we have emergency preparedness programs and resources in place, making sure that those programming and resources are available to various languages. So say, for instance, if there is a larger population of Spanish-speaking people or people that have hearing loss or are hard of hearing, then there might be American Sign Language that's available by video. But it just makes sure that people who do not have high proficiency in English have an availability to have those resources available to them in different languages. And so that's just creating the plan, not putting it into place yet, but creating the plan. That also passed out. House Bill 421 would allow for localities to have local ordinances on firearms. Right now, there is a ban, a statewide ban that says localities cannot have their own ordinances about guns or ammunition, transport of such, even governing their own buildings. So most town halls and city hall buildings, they can't even govern it within their own locality. And so House Bill 421 would allow for that. It would also allow for, let's say, the gun buyback programs or the those programs where people can turn over firearms. This would allow for the person that's handing it over to say, yes, you can destroy the firearm, as opposed to the locality having to sell it. And it also lifts the bans on localities from being able to sue gun manufacturers in an appropriate case. So that has passed. Also what has passed is the Youth Gang Violence Prevention Grant. And so you guys have heard me talk about this a lot, but with Hampton, Newport News, Norfolk, Richmond, and Roanoke, and also we added Portsmouth, those 6 localities would be given $25,000 to do a independent community assessment. And that would be through an independent agency. And with that independent agency can get to the bottom of what programs are we offering, what programs are working well, and then what are some things that we could be doing better. So say, for instance, in Newport News, the Department of Parks and Recreation have amazing programs, but some of them go under or unutilized. And so then we're hearing from the community that they didn't know about it. So what is it that we can do to make sure that the programs are being promoted in the areas that people are interested, or if there are transportation obstacles, but really making sure that the areas that have a disproportionate amount of youth and gang violence are doing everything that they can to make sure that the programming that they're offering is getting to the needs that we have. And so the Department of Criminal Justice Services would be the ones administering those grants, and that's in line with the Youth Promise Act and the community grants that were really needed in order for us to make sure that what we're offering is getting to the need. And then House Joint Resolution 111 would designate July as Maternal Health Awareness Month. We know that there are too many Virginians that are losing their lives between becoming pregnant, delivering their baby, and then within a year after that. And so we are trying to make sure that everyone is aware of what is going on, the resources that are available, and just making sure that anyone that chooses to have a baby is able to live life long enough to see that baby really grow up and really be there to be a parent for them. So that will deal with maternal and infant mortality. So those are a few of the bills that I've been working on that have already passed out of the House and are sitting in a Senate committee and waiting for crossover. And then some of the ones that are still in the House include House Bill 198. So I know that if you're from my area, you remember the bowl and the film canisters that the names were drawn out of in the 2017 election to decide who was going to represent the 94th district right beside the 95th district. And so instead of being chosen by lot, which is actually has been in our code since 1775. So you can imagine, in 1775, elections were a little bit smaller, jurisdictions were a little bit smaller. And so, when you had a tie and a recount, it being drawn by lot may not have been such a big deal. But now fast forward to 2020, when we have more than 8.3 million people in our state. If we had a tie and a recount, House Bill 198 would kick that to a special election so that the power remains still with the people. We also have House Bill 199, which was incorporated into House Bill 177. And so that's for the National Popular Vote Compact. I've heard from a lot of people, and I will tell you, from the 95th district, it has been overwhelmingly in favor. I might have gotten more emails in favor of the National Popular Vote Compact than any other of the bills that I've been working on, or just in general, specific to the conversation that I'm having with my own constituents in the 95th district. And so that passed out of the Privileges and Elections Committee and heads to the House floor. And what that is that Virginia would give its electoral votes to the candidate that received the highest number of votes in the popular vote. So the idea that one person is one vote. And so if we get to enough states that have signed onto the compact that equate that 270 electoral vote number, that's when this would go into effect. We do not believe that it will be in effect in time for the 2020 elections, but could work moving forward in future elections. Also, what is still alive are House Bill 338 and 339, and that would remove from the list of minimum wage exemptions domestic workers and those that work for businesses with 3 or fewer employees. And the idea behind that is that we shouldn't be discriminating against people for the type of work they do, that all Virginians deserve to at least earn the minimum wage. And so while those bills do not themselves change the minimum wage amount, they have been included in House Bill 395, which does include the amount and does include the amount being raised. And so keep an eye on House Bill 395 because House Bill 338 and 339 were included in that. And then my elections related bills are still in the House, being just passed out of the Privileges and Elections Committee on Friday. So we have House Bill 1086 that literally pulls from the code the words that instituted poll taxes between 1903 all the way through 1950. There were even words that would say that the ballots of African Americans had to be printed on different color paper or segregated and would not touch, white ballots, and that, you had to pay a certain amount of money in order to vote. And so that is stripping that from the code. And so even though we don't enforce that, it is pulling it from the code to really erase that sad part of our history. And for anyone that is wondering, the true form of a poll tax, whether it's through making people pay at the polls, or whether it was making people pay their fees and fines before their rights were able to be restored, as is practiced in Virginia now. All of that is now out of practice. And so we are effectively removing a financial burden for someone in order to vote. And so there's free photo ID now. The March 3rd election, you still have to have photo ID, even though we are working on bills that would remove that photo ID requirement. On March 3rd, if you're voting in the Democratic primary, you will still have to have photo ID, but there's a free one available at your voter registrar's office. And so I think the last little part of that, my colleague Delegate Kresak is working on, and that is to have, if you're returning an absentee ballot, for it to have postage paid so that you wouldn't have to purchase a stamp in order to return your absentee ballot. But we are definitely working so that there are no financial obstacles in between you and your access to the ballot. There's also House Bill 1255. And I really want to make sure that if people are paying attention to the redistricting conversation, that when you look at these bills, House Bill 1255, 1256, 758, and I think there was one other, please be sure to look at, like I described for the other bill, the substitute. That is the newest version with the newest language. So if you want to communicate with me about what the bill does or doesn't do, it is really important that we're working off of the newest version, which is the committee substitute. Originally, 1255 did not include provisions for ending prison gerrymandering, but it does now. And then it goes into more detail about how specifically district lines can and cannot be drawn in order to really end the practice of racial and partisan gerrymandering. So that's 1255. 1256 also, like I said, has a substitute, which is really, really, really important that you look at that as opposed to the previous version. I really, in my heart, believe that we need to get to completely independent redistricting, where legislators who will be the beneficiaries of gerrymandering are not a part of the legislative drawing process. But I was told that I did not have enough votes to get that out of the House. So in order to get a commission, a legislative fix with the commission, I did make some changes to it. And so it has now the same makeup of the commission that is in the proposed constitutional amendment. And so it's really important, like I said, to work off those substitutes so that you're working off the most up-to-date version of the bill, so that when we're talking about things, that we're all operating from the same place. So that is a lot, and those are bills that I'm working on right now. So I'm going to pause and see, ask Morgan if there are any questions relating to those bills, and then we'll get into a few other bills now.
So Rebecca seems to have a question about HB 266. Her question was, is the sheriff left to interpret satisfactory service? She wanted.
So that's the one that someone else is carrying? Because 266 or 277?
I believe she said 266.
Okay, let me come right back to that one. Are there any questions on the bills that I am carrying myself? And then I can handle those and then see if there's anyone else that has a question.
277.
Okay, all right, sorry, 277.
I read that wrong.
Sure, no problem, no problem. So what was Rebecca's question on 277?
Was the sheriff left to interpret satisfactory service? She asked for clarity of the decision process between nonprofits and the sheriff. She was confused as to whether that means that service with a nonprofit as defined by the Code of Virginia is applicable toward payment of fees, or whether the sheriff within each locality has the authority to decide what nonprofits qualify and which ones do.
Yes, so absolutely. So those, so the question was basically a lot about what is changing versus is not changing. So literally nothing else is changing within the sheriff's ability to apply the law. What is simply changing in House Bill 277 is moving those code sections that define what community service is within the confines of incarceration, and allowing for community service that's being done in the community. Within the community to count. So the sheriff, yes, will decide, which organizations, which events, at what time. So there's nothing that's changing with that. It's just legally allowing for community service that is performed to be able to count towards fees and fines. So thank you for that question and my ability to clarify that. Cool. So if there.
The only questions that we have about your bills
Okay. So then I'm going to go over a few other bills, and then we're going to open it up to you all to check in on some questions about bills that other folks are carrying. And I'm going to tell you about some bills that I feel very passionately about based on having received feedback from quite a few of you prior to session. But I am serving as chief co-patron to a few bills, and one is the House Bill 10. So you'll remember last year I had a bill that created the Office of the Student Loan Ombudsman. And so if you are a Virginian that has student loans and you have questions, there's a Virginia run department that now houses an Office of the Student Loan Ombudsman. So if you need more information on that, please contact us, because we definitely want to make sure that you can get access to this unbiased information as you're navigating repaying your loans. Well, we are continuing to work on student loan reform here in the Commonwealth, and House Bill 10 is one of those. It is a borrower's Bill of Rights. And so basically it licenses loan servicers, and it says these are the things that loan servicers have to do if they're dealing with loans that Virginians are taking out. And it is basically like using terms in plain English and making sure that, you know, if they're applying, you know, amounts that you've paid to the principal or to the interest, that is very clear. So if you have student loan debt, I would really suggest that you take a look at House Bill 10 and see what that is. It passed out of the House on a vote of 84-15 and is now going to the Senate. There is also a Senate companion that Senator Howell is carrying. House Bill 10 is being carried by Delegate Simon. So, you know, hey, these are the members of Senate Commerce and Labor. You want to contact them and say, please support House Bill 10, because we really, really need that here in the Commonwealth. And so that is on student loans. Also working with Delegate Aird on getting doulas certified, such that the first way that we have to go in order to get doulas to get reimbursed through programs like Medicaid, they would first need to be certified. So there are quite a few bills that are working on getting to a place of maternal health, as opposed to working under this current maternal mortality, but making sure that all of those people who are pregnant get to live out their lives in a healthy way. And I'm working on Delegate Aird with House Bill 687. And then House Bill 761. So if you guys know anything about the Voting Rights Act, the Supreme Court pretty much gutted the pre-clearance part out of that. And so what House Bill 761 would do is kind of reinstitute that on a state level. So you may have heard that, you know, some precincts were being moved, or precinct places were closing, or, you know, weren't as accessible, or were making these decisions that really impacted communities of color. Well, if they have a plan that would negatively impact communities of color or access to the ballot, it would have to be cleared first by the state. And so we're excited about that. Delegate Aird is working on SOQs and making sure that that the standards that we hold, the funding we put forward, is really the best for the quality of education that we want in our public school system. And then also working on House Bill 1333 is pretty cool. It's innovative. Let's say you're looking for a place and right now you don't have first month's rent plus security deposit. Well, this would allow for you to pay the premium for your insurance to serve as your security deposit. And so that reduces the amount that you would have to put up, and kind of helping to make sure that we're working more towards affordable housing. And then some of the other bills that I am really working hard to make sure that the patron can get them through. A lot of them are in different categories. So we'll talk about House Bill 66. House Bill 66 would cap the cost of insulin for insured at $30. So that is revolutionary, so that people can have better access to their insulin. Now, I know that it does not solve the problem for those that don't have insurance or are underinsured, but that is a great first step, and that's House Bill 66, and that is capping the cost of insulin so that people have a better shot at that. This year, I had House Bill 645, which would have allowed for insulin testing, monitors, testing supplies, eye exams, foot care exams, all the things that go into holistically or comprehensively dealing with diabetes to be covered, but not hit the deductible. And that went to a study. So we're hoping that we can bring that back next year, because I think that will also help as well. We have voting rights access. We have House Bill 1 and House Bill 761 that deal with no excuse absentee voting, which would pretty much get us to an early voting sort of stance where other states have, where you wouldn't have to say why you're voting early. You would just be allowed to vote early in that 45-day period. Several bills together. There's one that's taking the Lee Jackson holiday and putting the general election day as a holiday, so that more people can have access to the ballot the day of. And then there's some, like I said, that we're working on removing the photo ID requirement. It does not remove the ID requirement, but allows for you to use other ways of proving your identity. And also a statement along with those, a signed affidavit that says, I am who I say I am, punishable up to a felony. So I know some people are, sending me emails talking about, voter fraud. Let's be very clear. Voter suppression actually happening. Voter fraud, not. And so we really need to make sure that we understand what's actually happening in our state when we're putting forth some of these proposals. And the voter photo ID bill, that is removing that photo requirement, actually just gets us back into the posture of 2006 and before photo ID was instituted. So we have a long-standing history of this being effective and working. So I'm looking forward to going back to that. When we're looking at our civil rights, House Bill 1663 basically says that if you offer public accommodations or services, they should be open for everyone. And so doing good work with Delegate Sickles on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community, making sure that all Virginians really have equal access to services that are being given. There are quite a few bills on housing, and I just wanted to talk about a few of them because some of you know that I'm very attuned to situations that are happening within my district, within privately owned apartment buildings that have substandard living conditions. The owners have been really neglectful in getting some of the issues taken care of. And there are some ways that local government can be a part of the process, and that's through the Department of Codes Compliance. That's the crew that goes out, inspects the area, and sees, yes, this is wrong, this needs to be fixed, and then alerts both the tenant and the owner of a time frame where these things have to be fixed. And then on the federal government, there's HUD, and that is supposed to be the enforcement agency for some of these folks that are offering housing, either through vouchers or subsidies. And HUD is the one that's really supposed to be making sure that people are doing what they're saying that they're doing as it pertains to the owners. When it comes to the state level, we're kind of in between those two. We don't really have a lot of enforcement mechanisms, but what we can do is proactively have bills that are helping us get to a place of affordable and quality housing. And so House Bill 6 and 7 are with Delegate Bourne. And so House Bill 6 would basically define that you cannot discriminate against someone who is coming to you to get housing because they have a voucher. And so that is pretty awesome, especially when I hear from so many people that accept vouchers that the reason why they do it is because they know the money is going to come on time, and they know that the people that are using vouchers may not be able to pay all of the rent on their own, but are able to pay some. And so they're just looking for a good place to live. And so a lot of the pushback that we're hearing is based in wanting to discriminate. Now, it does not say that you have to accept vouchers. It just says that you cannot discriminate on that. And so Delegate Bourne is also working on House Bill 7 that would also help help alleviate some of these discriminatory practices that are preventing people from getting into housing. House Bill 99 with Delegate Rasul, he's working on making sure that if someone is in a domestic violence situation and they end up, let's say, with bad credit because of it, or they end up with these things on their file because of the situation that they were in, that won't be a reason of why, you know, they would be discriminated against in finding housing. And we know how important it is for someone, in order to get out of a bad situation, to be able to get into secure housing, that is one of the first steps that they need in order to take that step to getting to safety. And so we want to make sure that it's easier for them to transition to the next place that they will live, especially if they have young children, and just understanding the fundamental nature of secure housing and how it impacts every other part of our lives. And so House Bill 99 is working on that. House Bill 393 and 1333, 1420, and Senate Bill 906, there are a few things in there. One is developing a tenant's Bill of Rights and making sure that it is in plain English what a tenant's rights are. Some of the tenants that are in these apartment complexes did not know that they had tools that were available to them to try and make things go better, that there are agencies that they could call that could help them navigate the legal process, or explain, let's say, what putting rent into escrow means if you don't want to pay rent because you know, people haven't fixed the problems that you've put in work orders for. And then right now, legally, the only reason why someone can sue over these sort of landlord and tenant situations is for non-payment of rent. So Senate Bill 906 would actually help people who don't want to pay their rent because they haven't been, it hasn't been fixed. Say, for instance, the heating is off, the AC is off, or these things that are really in the contract have not been fixed. It allows for them to take action and say, well, this is why I haven't paid my rent, because these things haven't been fixed. And so it kind of helps to level the playing field between a tenant and a landlord, making sure that that relationship is what it's intended to be: fair, and that the place that folks are living is safe and clean and all of that. So that's with housing. As far as food access, House Bill 1410, Danica Rome, Delegate Rome, right now, I know some of you know, but if I have an EBT card or if I have a SNAP card and I go into Wawa, I can get a cold cut sandwich, but I can't get a meatball sandwich because we have been criminalizing the poor, and we have been instituting these asinine and archaic restrictions to make you feel bad about the fact that you need benefits in order to feed yourself or your family. In addition to the fact that if someone is experiencing homelessness and can only buy cold food, but they don't have access to the appliances that help you warm it, then you're stuck eating cold food. And so that's just, it's not needed. It's not, you know, trying to basically make sure that people who are experiencing these impoverished conditions stay there or feel bad about their situation. We really need to start taking some of that out of the code. And so this would allow for any restaurant or store that wants to opt into this. So say like a Subway, 7-Eleven, Wawa, and say, yes, you want to use your EBT card, you can either get a cold cut sandwich or you can get a meatball sub. It does not matter the temperature of the food. We just want you to be able to get food. So that's House Bill 1410. And House Bill 1509 with Delegate McQuinn, she's working on making sure that there's better access to food in our food deserts. And so it would be a grocery store fund. So much like what the city of Newport News and I know Richmond and Norfolk have had to deal with, it would actually be state funds that can help toward establishing grocery stores and access to food within these areas. I'm almost done, and then I want to take your questions. House Bill 1467 would establish a process for people who are incarcerated to start getting their critical records and identification prior to getting out of from incarceration, so that they can better have the paper papers and the forms that they need in order to access housing, healthcare, and food, and jobs, and all of that. And so it's really helping smooth the reentry process by them being able to get it before they're out. House Bill 1544. I know that you all have heard the situation where minors were being made to go through strip searches before they could visit their loved ones within state facilities. That would outlaw that practice, and also ensure that even if there is an issue with a strip search, or if something, we know that the dogs sniffing is not a scientific basis of who has something on them and who doesn't. It would ensure that you would at least get a non-contact visit as opposed to being turned away if it is truly found that you do not have anything on your person. And so that's helping. We know that staying in contact with your family and being able to really keep those relationships while you're incarcerated helps lower the rate of recidivism once the people have really returned to society. And so it's already hard enough having your loved one away, and just, we don't need to make kids go through strip searches. I know it's not funny. I'm sorry for laughing. It's just so bizarre and so far-fetched that we need House Bill 1544, but we do, and we're going to pass it. And also, there's House Bill 1070, and more on education. There's House Bill 1508, but there are plenty of things that are out there for a lot of the topics that I know that you all have really at the heart of what you're going through. So I'm going to pause there and ask Morgan if there were any questions about bills that I wasn't carrying myself.
I do have a question for Neil, and Neil, I might ask you to type that back out because I had a hard time understanding it.
Okay, so Morgan, if you, Neil, if you could retype your question, maybe ask it in a different way so that we're clear on what it is that you're specifically asking, and then that way we can make sure you get your answer. And while he's doing that, did anybody else have a question?
We have a question from someone. Does the budget have to be passed by crossover?
Awesome. Thank you for that question. So as you all know, the budget is a bill, just like any other bill. And there are two parts, House Bill 29 and House Bill 30. One deals with general funds, one deals with non-general funds, basically the money that we can allocate for different things and the money that's already allocated for certain things. So that process does not have to be done by crossover. So you'll start hearing me talk about the budget a lot. And so the process is, the governor puts forth in December the introduced budget. That is with all of the governor's priorities, with the funding for things, and then the House and Senate both receive it. And about mid-February, you will see the Senate put theirs out with the amendments that they've made, and the House put ours out with the amendments that we've made. So say, for instance, House Bill 420 that would allow for making a plan for emergency preparedness items to be available in different languages, that comes with the fiscal impact. So it wasn't in the introduced budget. So I put in a budget amendment that said, hey, we need $75,000 in order to pay for a coordinator to help us get this plan together. So if that passes, and it passed out of the House, having been through to the appropriations. So we need that $75,000 to now be a part of the budget in order for it to be appropriated. So you got to keep your eye on these different things. I know it's a lot to keep track of, so we're always here to help if you have any questions. But just because a bill passes doesn't mean that it gets implemented unless it's funded. If it comes with a state financial or fiscal impact. And so I believe Budget Sunday is next Sunday. Don't quote me, but I will definitely come back. I promise you, I will come back either with a live Facebook or Instagram or another webinar like this so that we can talk more specifically about the budget. It's really hard to talk about it until we see the House, Senate, and introduced all lined up to see what we want to continue to work on. And so that's why I'm not really talking about it a lot right now, but thank you for that question. Are there any other questions?
Neil, clarify his question.
Okay.
He said he heard of a bill in the daily press that would limit gun magazines to hold 12 cartridges. That might be hard for manufacturers to adjust to and for lawful customers. They have to change magazines that normally hold 4 cartridges rounds have you thought about this?
Awesome. So thank you for your question, Neil. And so that was about House Bill 961. And again, I ask you to look at the substitute because this one was changed significantly from the introduced version. And so what it does, it bans certain types of I would say weapons of war. And then that is by January. And then it also limits the magazine size, bump stocks, and silencers. And so that's all within House Bill 961. That is what passed from the Public Safety Committee in the House. But I will lead you also to another patron, and that is Senator Saslaw, and his also changed quite a bit as well, I believe, from the introduced version. But let's scroll to see. And I'm gonna let you know why it's important. So that one was stricken, so it was another one. But basically, the versions that have come out of the House and come out of the House committee and the Senate are different. And so if the House passes one version and the Senate passes another, once they cross over and both bills pass their chambers, then they'll come together in what's called a conference. And in that conference, there'll be certain delegates and certain senators that will come together, probably in about 6 or 7 people, and they'll talk out the differences. And then hopefully we get to one final version. And then that's what goes forward to become law. But sometimes there are some bills that they just can't get over their differences. So that bill does not go any further and effectively dies in conference. And so I would say definitely keep your eye open for the changes that may come to House Bill 961 as it goes through the House and the Senate process. Okay, and so that is that. Is there anyone else that has a question?
We do have one more question. Someone would like to know, how can I watch these meetings so that I can stay informed?
Oh, perfect. So the question was, how can I watch these meetings so that I can stay informed? And that is a great, great, great question. So if you go to delegatemarciaprice.com, I have quite a few links that help you keep up with session. And in my introductory parts, there is right here where you can watch session from the floor, but there's also our committee video here. So I'm gonna click it so you see kind of what comes up. So this is for the House. There's also video available for the Senate, but I'll let you find that one. For the House, it comes up looking like this. And so let's say you read in the paper that during a committee meeting on Friday, this was discussed. So you would click the Friday, and then right here, they're all listed. And so I know a lot of people had questions about the guns. You can actually click on that meeting and hear the testimony yourself from that one. And so then you would just click play. So today we had the pro forma session. So if you have any questions about what that looked like, you can click today's video and click on that. So that's one way if you know the date. If you don't know the date, but you know the committee, then it's a little bit different way. You can go to the LIS website and you can do a couple of things. The easiest thing for me to do is to first find out what's happening coming up. So if you click on meetings, it says, okay, I need to pay attention because on Tuesday at 8:30, there's this thing that I want to see, or a meeting that is going to happen. You can also go to standing committees. So for Neil's question on the guns, it would be within the Public Safety Committee. So you would click on that. You see all of the members that are on that. You also see when they meet. So Friday at 8 a.m., that is when they meet. and this is the room that they meet in. So then you would click on, while we're on this page, you can also see all of the bills thus far, those that were referred at the beginning, those that are still in committee or in subcommittee, those that reported out to the floor, those that were continued until next year, and those that failed. And then you can also look up things by subcommittee as well. But if you wanted to see video, you would click on agendas. And sorry, I think we're all pulling from the internet. And then you would click on the date. So again, if you wanted to see, I heard that there was a comment made in a meeting on the 31st of January, you could click on that. Then you would see the bills that were being discussed. You can click on them to go straight to the bill so that you can read it. So my House Bill 422 on those grants for those 6 localities, that was discussed in full committee that day. So then you would click for video, you would click on archived. And that's when the video could come up and you can watch and see what was said yourself to come up with your own opinions. But sometimes, I know, you hear from hearsay of what happened, but I tell you, we delegates, we really love for you all to quote us on the actual words that we used ourselves. And so that's one way to do it. And so that is how you get to the House committee meetings. And then looking ahead, once you know that you're following a bill, let's say you're following a Senate bill that came over to the House and you see which committee it goes into, you can click any of them and get there. Typically, the agenda for a meeting is published at least 24 hours prior to, unless it's a special meeting or an emergency meeting. So that is how you can get to follow the floor and committee meetings. What's the next question?
Keith Watkins would like to know, for House Bill 395, the initial increase is $10. It will gradually increase to 15. Why is that? And you mentioned that your bills 336 and 337 were being incorporated to 395. So does that mean those will only pass if 395 passes?
Great questions, Keith. Thank you. And so the question was basically why the changes to House Bill 395. And we are going to go to the site and then we're going to go and look for the latest version. So here on the 4th, there was a committee substitute that came out of the Labor and Commerce Committee. But then it was reported out and went to the Appropriations Committee. And then on the 7th, here is the substitute that came out from the Appropriations Committee, which is what we will be voting, debating tomorrow and voting on Tuesday. And so this, I'll answer your last question first. The strikeout language is what we are proposing to pull out of the code. So that means that they would no longer be there. My House Bill 330, sorry, I forget the numbers, 338 would have excluded from the exemptions, meaning it would include those domestic workers here on line number 2. So the bill got left in committee, but the change that I was seeking is included in this bill. So yes, the answer to your question is 395 must pass in order for the domestic workers to be included in getting the minimum wage, whatever the amount is, but for them to get it. And then House Bill 339 would be here on item number 14, line 34 through 36. And that is the people that are working in organizations that have 3 or fewer employees. And so that is now included in House Bill 395. Again, yes, in order for those changes to occur, the bill would have to pass. And then if we have a Senate version and a House version and they get together, it would have to stay in the final version of that bill that goes to the governor's desk in order to be fully included. And so then I think the other part of the question was about the numbers. And so this is the breakdown that's in the newest version of the bill. Excuse me. So you would see the amounts that it would get to, and and the time it would. So I want to reiterate that you need to look at the substitute, because sometimes the title of the bill and even the description of the bill is no longer applicable once a new substitute has come out. So let's say there was a bill to make the state color pink, but while it was in committee, they decided, nope, we're going to change it to purple, and then it passes out with purple. Well, the title of the bill might still be state color pink, but the substitute says the newest version, and that says purple. I apologize that that is so confusing, but that's why it's so important that you understand the amendments and the substitutes. So right here in 40.1-28.10, it says that prior to July 1st. So if this bill passes, everything in it will go into effect July 1st of this year. And if you go to B, from July 1st of 2020 to July 1st of 2021, the state minimum wage would be $10. Then it goes to $11.25, then $12, then $13, then $14, then $15. So one major change from this is not only the amounts that it changed to, but where her previous version would have gotten the $15 at 2023, this is now $15 at 2026. I am now editorializing. This is just my opinion. My opinion is that if this is the best that we can do, getting out of, remember, it has to get out of the House, out of the Senate, and be signed by the governor. It takes those three parts. If this is the best we can do, I will support it with an asterisk. The asterisk is if $15 an hour is our goal for next year, by 2026, $15 an hour will still have people in impoverished situations. That is a long time to wait to get to $15 an hour. So I get it. Bills have to pass. I am all for raising the minimum wage. And I do believe that there was a lot of pressure from the business community for it to be a longer phase in because of their fear that they weren't going to be able to keep up with it, or that there are these other things that they need to be able to adapt to in order to eventually get to 15. So it's this compromise that you have to get to where you're weighing the concerns and the needs of the workers with those of the jobs and corporations and businesses. I do not believe that this was the best that we could do and as far as the compromise, but again, it has to get out of the House, the Senate, and be signed by the governor. And so keep your eye on it, but I hope that answered your question, Keith. If I missed out any of it, then I apologize, but I'm getting a thumbs up that may have answered your question. So great. And what's our next question, Morgan?
As of right now, I do not have any questions.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to show you two more things because I don't want to intrude on too much of your time, and I know that we have a lot that we could go over, and I also know that if you're spending an hour with me on a Sunday, it's because you're probably caring. So I'll take a little bit of liberty to show you one other website, and it's virginiageneralassembly.gov. This is a great website as well that has a lot of the information that I've talked about, plus some. So sometimes you guys may be wondering, I mean, I understand committees and things, but I really forgot the big picture of how bills become laws. And do not have any shame. I go back to the 4th grade coloring book and I go over some of these things too, because the little, cartoon kind of helps with how a bill becomes a law. So seriously, it walks you through the process, and it reminds you that even once you get to the Senate or the House, you got to go through the other one. It talks about when we vote on it, what it means, and it even talks about the 4 different things that the governor can do to a bill when the governor gets it. And then don't forget, I need you guys to stay well attuned to the situation, because after all is said and done, after the House finishes its work and gets to crossover, and the Senate finishes its work and gets to crossover, and then we switch each other's bills, and then we get to the end of session, then we come back in April and we answer to the governor's either proposed amendments or vetoes. And so this is a long process before we get to July 1st. But there's lots of things on the website that are really, really cool. You can see members, you can see video, you can see who's my legislator. That's a really important one because some people are like, you know, just really getting attuned to what's going on. There's no judgment there. Welcome to the table, but you may not know who your delegate is, and that's really important. You can type in your information here, get your delegate, your senator, I believe your congressperson, and information on the 2 United States senators as well. And so that's pretty important. And then if you go back to my website, there's other links in here. You can get to all of the bills. You can get to the bills that I've done. You can sign up for my newsletter. You do not have to be a constituent in order to sign up for my newsletter. But I want you to pay attention to this link too. It's called 2020 Session. If you click on that, this is where I'm posting updates and resources for, I really need to make this font bigger. I will make this font bigger, but basically I'm walking you through how to engage on session. This is a reminder that if it's regular font or italics or strike through, what does it mean? How to get in touch with us? What's the best way to do that? Where's the budget? Where's the Constitution? All of these things. And then I'm also walking you through some of my bills and some bills of note. And it includes some press coverage of it as well. And then you also have this link to my YouTube videos, which I will get to in one second. But if you want to sign up for email updates, you can either do it right here on the left sidebar or down at from the homepage. Let's go home. Down at the bottom of the homepage, you can sign up as well. And so that's really important. I send out a lot through the email updates. Here's also some important voting information. If you should choose to participate in the March 3rd election, it lets you know some important deadlines. Monday is the last day to either update your registration or do a voter registration in time for the March 3rd election. So if you have recently gotten your rights restored or have not yet received your seal, but you did it a couple of weeks to ask for your rights to be restored, definitely check at the rights restoration site here in green. You can check the status of your request. It may have been granted, but you may not have received the form yet. That will help you because if it says restored, then you can register to vote. So if you've requested that your rights be restored, check the status. If it hasn't been done yet, you gotta wait just a little longer. If it has, you can go on. If you need to put in a request to have your rights restored, that can go there. So that again is on my website as well. And then let's go to this voting information again. There's some other sites. It talks about the IDs that you can use, how to get in touch with the Newport News and Hampton voter registrar, some information about that, you know, restoration of rights, and then the names of all of the people that represent these areas with some important links and websites as well. So that's if you're participating in that one. And then our contact information, but again, on our 2020 session page, there's a link for YouTube videos. And these are all of the videos that I'm uploading. I'm trying to put them in one site. There's some on IGTV, there's some on Facebook, but all of them are here on YouTube. And you can see when I've introduced bills on the floor, when I've introduced them in committee, and kind of track the process. So from subcommittee to floor, first read, second read, third read, passage, then we'll follow them to the Senate. It's really one thing to read them. It's another thing, I think, to watch and just to see the conversation. Not everyone agrees with me. I get it. There are 100 of us. So sometimes in committee, we have really great discussions and might even do amendments to the bill based on what other people have asked or inputted. And then, you know, when we have debate on the floor, typically the questions are for clarification. Sometimes it's for, you know, partisan jabs, but we like to keep it for those real conversations. So that's on my YouTube, but all of this is also on my website. You can click our social media. page to get the links for my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then you can also click upcoming events where we like to keep everything like today's flyer. There's also some postpartum support information for some events that are coming up. There's a student volunteer program with NASA. And then in Newport News and Hampton, it's links to stay tuned with the city council and school board. One last piece is the news link. If you go to my site and you click on news, what we do is we update my site with all of the mentions of the bills that I'm working on or situations that I've been a part of. So you can read a lot about redistricting reform. That debate happens tomorrow. And you can follow me on Twitter and you can see why I have a problem with the proposed constitutional amendment and why I have put forward House Bill 1256 and 1255 to govern the redistricting process for 2021 with the hopes of getting to a better amendment in 2021 and 2022 to guide us for the future redistricting processes. It talks about the gun bills. You can just keep scrolling and it just shows you a lot of the news coverage that we've gotten. On one day last week, I was in the DC news, DC metropolitan area news for the furloughed workers bill. I was at on back home news for the funds for the youth and gang violence prevention. And then I was on the local news here in Richmond for the local gun bill. And then there was another one too that had been covered. Redistricting has been covered. So if you don't want to have to click through all of these, here's video from the press conference that we had with the Brennan Center about how House Bill 1256 and its original form would work, so you can kind of see where that independent redistricting commission would have gone. And then again, like I said, it has been amended. But yeah, you can just really follow a lot. If there's anything that you see isn't on my website, but that you would want us to have a button for, or to make sure that we cover it, we're open to suggestions. It has a contact page where you can send us messages. It also has the contact information. So if you have a scheduling request or a constituent concern, please use the email listed here, because the general email is lots of people from all over the country telling me things that they want me to know. Or you can use this site here and then you can sign up for the email updates. But I really, really want you all to stay in touch with me, whether you're my constituent or not, because I want to make sure that you have the information that you need in order to follow along with the things that we are working on. I do not assume that you always agree with me, but I still want to hear from you. We have some pretty big issues still to be debated. We have casinos, voting election bills, minimum wage, redistricting. All of that is still left between Monday and Tuesday, prior to the end of Tuesday, when Wednesday we jump into crossover. We've got Valentine's Day coming up. We have Black History speeches from members of the Black Caucus, the Democratic Caucus, and the Republican Caucus in the House, giving speeches with what we call points of personal privilege every day in February. I mean, there's just so much going on here that we want to make sure that if you can't get here, that you can follow from home. And I will close with this. If you can get to Richmond, I would say you should. I can describe it for you all day, but without actually being here and seeing it, sometimes it's hard to really realize all that goes into the things. And so sometimes you guys write me emails like, well, why don't y'all just fix so-and-so? Well, if you come, you'll see, what a huge lift things are, and why government sometimes does work at a little bit of a slower pace than maybe the local, but we're still quicker than federal. So I really hope that you've learned something new, that you plan to share anything new that you've learned, that you've gotten something that you can take within this process to move forward and keeping track with the bills, keeping track on what I'm doing, and a way to speak to us. Excuse me, if there's anything that we didn't cover or that you want to know more about, please email us. I'll be here pretty late this evening, catching up on the hundreds of bills that we still have coming before us this week. So it's not a bother. Please reach out to us, and we look forward to discussing this. We'll have that budget conversation a little bit later, and then we'll also have a check-in before the end of session so we can tell you how some of the House bills have fared in the Senate and what some of the Senate bills as they're going through the House. Thank you for spending time with me on a Sunday evening or afternoon, and I really do appreciate your engagement. Make sure next time you bring a friend, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.